In early 2006, Australian Ricky Megee, then a middle-aged man, set out on what was supposed to be a routine journey across the country. His route took him through the Tanami Desert in the Northern Territory, one of the harshest and most desolate landscapes in Australia. But what began as a normal trip soon turned into a nightmare of survival. According to Ricky, he stopped to pick up a woman hitchhiker. What happened after that remains a mystery. He claimed he was drugged, possibly attacked, and then abandoned. When he regained consciousness, he found himself half buried in the sand, covered with a sheet of plastic, lying under the blazing sun of the endless desert. His body was racked with pain, and his mind was torn apart by fear and confusion. The last thing he remembered was offering a ride to a stranger along a lonely stretch of highway. Now he was left without his car, without food or water, and with no memory of how it had happened. His shoes, wallet, and phone were gone. The sun scorched mercilessly, and the hot, dry wind only made things worse. He was completely alone in a world that knew no mercy. The Tanami Desert is a vast ocean of red sand and rocky plains stretching for thousands of kilometers, spanning from the Northern Territory into Western Australia. It is one of the most remote places on the continent, where absolute silence reigns and the wild beauty of nature is matched only by its cruelty. Unlike the towering dunes of other deserts, the Tanami is mostly flat and open, dotted with thorny shrubs, scattered acacias, and ancient cracked earth carved by wind and time. Water is almost impossible to find here. It may lie hidden deep underground or appear only briefly after rare desert rains. The days bring heat fierce enough to dry a body in hours, while the nights turn bitterly cold, chilling bones to the core. At first, Ricky tried to believe it was all just a nightmare. But the dryness of his throat, the sunburned blisters on his skin, and the gnawing emptiness in his stomach told him otherwise. He had truly been left alive, yet utterly defenseless. Instinct took over. Staggering and barely able to stand, he tried to figure out which way to go. There were no roads, no signs of people, only the wind and the occasional cry of desert birds. The first few days passed in a haze. He walked mile after mile, hoping to stumble upon a track or a cattle station. But all he found was endless scrubland and merciless heat. By day, the sun burned everything in sight. By night, the cold gnawed at his bones. With nothing to eat, he began catching ants, beetles, caterpillars, anything he could get his hands on. Eventually, he learned to hunt small lizards and frogs, squeeze moisture from leaves, or dig into the ground to reach damp soil. One day, he discovered a dam filled with murky water. Even knowing it was likely teeming with parasites, he drank it, thanking fate for the chance to live another day. To protect himself from the brutal heat, he dug shallow pits and covered himself with branches and dirt. His only real prize in the desert was a sheet of plastic. It became a lifeline, helping him collect rainwater and shield himself from the scorching sun and wind. To hold on to his sanity, he marked the days with tally scratches, talked to himself, invented stories, and sang songs, anything to remind himself that he was still human. His body kept wasting away. He had lost more than 60 pounds. His face had hollowed out, his skin was scorched by the sun, and his hair and beard had grown long and wild, turning him into a figure straight out of some primal nightmare. He looked almost inhuman, dried out, skeletal, yet somehow still alive. There were days when he nearly gave up, convinced he wouldn't live to see another sunrise. And yet Ricky refused to abandon hope. He clung to the belief that one day a helicopter, a truck driver, or workers from a nearby station might spot him. Even the flight of a bird overhead seemed like a sign. Where there is life, there might be water. To improve his chances, he began leaving signals. He laid out arrows in the sand using branches and stones, snapped shrubs to create faint trails. His desperation became messages, silent cries for help he prayed someone might notice from the sky or a distant ridge. Whether anyone ever would, he didn't know. Then, on April 5, 2006, a miracle happened. Workers from the Birrindidu cattle station, near the border of the Northern Territory and Western Australia, were carrying out their usual tasks when they noticed movement on the horizon. At first, They thought it was a wild animal, or perhaps just a mirage shimmering in the desert heat. But as they drew closer, they realized it was a man, a gaunt figure, sunburned and barely standing, weakly waving his arm. His body was covered in blisters, his skin cracked, his face skull-like, and his lips split and bleeding. Hanging from him was an old shirt fashioned into something like a poncho and little else. The workers had never seen a human in such a condition. They rushed to him, recognizing immediately that he was on the brink. Dehydrated, starved, barely conscious. Ricky mumbled incoherently, disoriented but alive. They gave him water, shared what little food they had, and called for help right away. Soon after, a Royal Flying Doctor Service helicopter airlifted him to Darwin Hospital. The doctors were stunned. He had survived 71 days alone in one of the harshest deserts in Australia, with almost nothing. They treated him for dehydration, exhaustion, and severe sun damage. By the time he was rescued, he had lost more than 60 pounds. Doctors said he had literally come back from the edge of death. One nurse remarked, "He looked like someone who had just walked out of a World War II prisoner of war camp." Yet, against all odds, his recovery was astonishingly quick. Just a few days after his rescue, Ricky was already talking, eating, and even cracking jokes. When his story hit the media, he instantly became a national sensation. Reporters swarmed him with questions. What really happened? Was he drugged? Was it an attack? Or had he simply gotten lost and disoriented? Ricky stuck to his account. On the road from Alice Springs to Port Mize, he had picked up a hitchhiker, and that stranger had drugged him. He was convinced he had been deliberately left to die. Not everyone believed him. Skeptics found his story too strange, too inconsistent. But one fact remained undeniable. He had survived where almost anyone else would have perished. In the end, he wrote a book called Left for Dead, where he shared his own version of events. In it, he described the desert in all its brutal reality, the isolation, the hallucinations, the hunger, and the terrifying closeness to madness when you walk forward for weeks on end, clinging only to the will to survive. This was the incredible, yet entirely true, story of Ricky Megee, a man who stared death in the face and managed to prevail where almost no one else would have stood a chance. For 71 days, he was completely alone in the heart of the Tanami Desert, a place considered one of the harshest on Earth. With no food, no water, and no support, he survived only through instinct, resourcefulness, and an unbreakable will to live. His determination proved stronger than the heat, the cold, the hunger, and the crushing loneliness. His story reminds us just how fragile, yet incredibly resilient, human life can be. It's living proof that even in the darkest moments, when it feels like all hope is gone, there is always a chance if you refuse to give up. If this story moved you as deeply as it did me, please hit the like button. It really helps the channel and supports the creation of more videos. And if you want to hear more true and astonishing survival stories and unbelievable real-life events, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of this story. There are many more incredible tales ahead that prove just how strong the human spirit can be.